And we are live. Today, I have my beautiful daughter back for the first time in a while, and my new friend, who's also, I'm calling him my soul brother. He doesn't, I don't know if he's okay with that yet, but
And we are live.
he is absolutely
Today, I have my
somebody.
beautiful.
Hold on, I have a, oh, there it goes. It went away. I had an echo. But I have Texas Slim here, also known as TC, and somebody that I found through a really intelligent friend of mine who is always researching, always learning. And she happened to hear Adam Curry on Joe Rogan talk about Texas Slim and his beef initiative. And so let's start there, if you don't mind. Just give everybody kind of a background about how you got into the limelight and what your mission is.
Hey, Carmen. Hey, Carlisle. Thanks for having me. It's great to meet you guys. We've had a couple of chats, Carmen, and your friend, that reached out. A lot of good talks with her as well. There's a lot of intelligent people in this conversation, and I'm kind of, pretty excited that people are starting to be able to kind of tune into it. I grew up in Texas. I have a long history in Texas, probably seventh generational, and my family comes from agriculture. That's how we got here. That's how we established Texas. Been here since the late 1800s. Went through the whole farming sequence through the Great Depression, through the Dust Bowl, and my grandfather stuck it out. And so I was raised on a farm on the when we could on the weekends. I grew up in a small town called Canyon, Texas. And so I left Canyon, Texas when I was young, and I went to Austin and I started studying, and I started learning technology. So I got into technology and learned how to be a very good researcher, analyst, and basically use technology in a very low time preference way in my life to where everybody else was using it in a very high time preference way. And throughout the years, I've learned how to basically use technology to access more truth. And I knew something's up with our food. And I had time during COVID to do some research just because how the world was. And so I started reflecting. I said, well, I'm going to go after food. I'm going to honor my grandfather's life by bringing some education because I know how to do it. And, because I've been a consultant, I've been in technology, but I also very blue collar, pretty much was raised kind of a cowboy, small town Texas, kind of tough grit type of way that, that was the only way. And so I went on harvest. I embedded myself into a harvest company, and I wanted to go and talk to people, and I wanted to go up and shake their hands and look at them in the eyes and say, hey, what's going on? And I just found out a lot of deception that was actually going on with what was going on in the narrative, as far as food, what the excuses are, as far as production, as far as market access, as far as processing our animal proteins. And it all just started coming together. So I had to start writing about it. So I created a newsletter and I sent it out there, and the world started listening a little bit. I don't know how many people. I don't really look at the analytics on the data side, but I know people are wanting to have a conversation, and I'm willing to kind of let everybody know where I am, the research that I was able to perform, and then kind of the beef initiative in which I've founded and that we're moving forward with. And it's based on all of my, we all look at, we have our Simon Sinek moments of our what's and how's and why's. My why is that I need to help save some children and their nutrition in the United States. And that's it, nothing more. And so I'm pretty much driven to do that from here on out. I wasn't going to do this. I was going to be in Thailand riding a motorcycle, and, and COVID hit. And then so here we are now. And so I'm a pretty driven guy. I usually see things through, and here we are talking today.
I love it. And so what led, so you went from the newsletter to the beef initiative. How did you end up crossing paths with Adam Curry, who was talking about you on Joe Rogan?
Well, with my research into food, I started researching into Bitcoin, and I don't
Okay.
research into anything else. I research into a decentralized protocol that is a store of value that has a chance to be sound money that we've never seen before. So the decentralization of Bitcoin helped me understand the decentralization of what is needed in food. And so that led me to certain connections. And I was on Marty Bent's podcast. Marty Bent is a very intelligent, very good podcaster, very good ambassador for what's going on in the decentralized world, not only just Bitcoin, but decentralized food, communications, and everything. Him and Adam knew each other, and it just kind of started falling into place that we started having some good conversations and that we started networking. We networked in a decentralized way to where it was word of mouth. It was, establishing a relationship with somebody, meeting them and having a conversation. And, that's what I'm trying to emulate towards. This is how we need to approach our food, especially when it comes to animal protein. We need to be able to know who is providing our food.
Yeah. There's a couple of things I love about you. I love that you're so flexible. You have a genius for being flexible, but you also understand the difference between kind of a synthetic way of operating in the world and the decentralized, which to me is like a human blockchain almost. That we have such an ability as humans to keep adding on to each other and improving each other and building into communities. And I think it's so underestimated. So I love, like, literally I've listened to probably 10 of your podcasts and things that you have been a guest on, and I'm just so impressed at the scope. So it was almost a little bit daunting, like, where do I begin with him? But let's do this. I love that you're also a call to action guy. So let's start with the nightmare that you see, and then where we can fix it in the call to action, because I love that
Sure.
that's a part of what you do. And then Carlisle, please, you understand a lot of the regulations and a lot of the food stuff, so just pop in if something you think that people won't understand, just interrupt and just clarify.
Sure. It is a hard place to start. And whenever I was on harvest, you go through the planning, the growing, the harvest season, the where it goes for processing, what is being processed, what type of plants are being planted for certain reasons, crops, everything. So knowing the agricultural world in a very foundational mindset is very hard to do right now. We try to feed the world. That's all you ever hear. And so by saying that, we're very global with our food production. The industrialization of our food is so complex that people do not understand. So I started with the source of the seed, is what I call it. Let's get back to the seed. Where is the seed? Where's the good seed? Where's the bad seed? Why do we have a genetically modified seed that basically can be manipulated every 13 months? And that is used to leverage against the farmers. So understanding that most of all of our food in the United States is controlled by chemical companies. Those chemical companies basically are the big players, and I'm not going to talk bad about them and everything. It's just who they are. They're chemical companies that grow our food, and then they process our food, and then they allow us to have access to that food. We don't have much of a say-so of it anymore. Farmers do not even have much of a say-so of it anymore. And I don't talk bad about farmers that have to go through the process of what they have to do, but they have to sign technology use agreements to be able to plant their crops every year. If they don't follow the rules of Monsanto and Bayer, then they don't get to be farmers. And this is where we are. And that's the same with farmers. We're talking about ranchers, because a lot of our animal protein is fed grain that is provided by these farmers. So there's a lot of centralized apparatus controls that are put into our food complex that we don't understand. My newsletter kind of starts from the source of the seed, and we work up from there. And we understand where our nutrition is truly coming from, how much it's been depleted throughout the last 50 years, let's say, into where we are now with our health as a nation. 78% of us are either obese or overweight. 1 out of 2 of us is either diabetic or pre-diabetic. And that's just the facts. And then 46% of our children between the ages of 5 and 11 are obese or overweight and on their way to being diabetic. There is a damn problem here, and we need to talk about it, and we need to say why. And we need to say, well, we have solutions. And that's what I'm doing right now is providing that solution, but having a foundational understanding of where your food comes from. And it's not even really food anymore. It's so heavily processed. The FDA this year won a lawsuit, and they won a lawsuit, and they used the GRAS rule. It's the GRAS rule, and it means generally recognized as safe. Well, the FDA can say, hey, this chemical is safe. Let's put it into the food. We were trying to sue, well, American people, citizens were trying to sue the FDA saying you cannot put these chemicals into our food anymore without telling us what they are. Just because you say that they're safe does not mean that they're safe. Well, they won that lawsuit, and this next year we'll have 1,000 new chemicals that will be okay to be put into our processed food that's done by the industrial food complex. And you start looking at the ingredients of these food, we can't read labels anymore. I mean, you can't pronounce those words, and everybody's like, oh, well, the FDA says it's safe. Well, the FDA and the USDA have a lot of answering to do. They don't have to answer to anybody. So what we're going to do is just ask them to the table and say, let's have a conversation.
Right.
Help me understand why we need all of this. And they're going to come back with saving the climate. They're going to say, we're saving the world. We're not feeding the world. We never have fed the world. We waste a lot of food. We create a byproduct, fake commodity that we call food, and we let it go to waste left and right. There's so many narratives in this food discussion that are not based on facts, but are based on the agenda of these global corporations that feed us.
Wow.
That's what I was going to say. I think it's interesting that there is such like a big disconnect in like basic understanding about where people's food comes from, because all you've ever seen from any mainstream media standpoint or any narrative that's pushed is how if you eat less meat, specifically red meat, you're saving the planet. And what most people don't understand, that if you're eating something that's made mostly from soy that was grown in a rainforest from halfway across the world, what it takes to get from halfway across the world to your plate is doing so much more damage to the planet than eating, beef from a farm. I think it's just the way that a lot of factory farming is industrialized that has that effect. But it is very interesting how that has become like the overall accepted narrative, like even within the past 5 to 10 years. And something I wanted to ask you about was, because I've talked to a few, like if you go to a farmer's market and you buy some vegetables, a lot of it will be like done with organic style farming, because in order to get like the organic, like the USDA organic approval, the farmers themselves, don't they have to pay out of pocket to get that approval? And it's just a lot of like paperwork. So even if they are using like, organic practices, I think this is something that a lot of people don't know, that you can buy produce that's grown organically, but it's not going to have the stamp of organics, because it's kind of a waste of money for a farmer to do a bunch of paperwork just to get some kind of stamp of approval.
It really is. It's been hijacked as far as organic, just the whole word organic. And the people out there that are trying to do the right things are caught in a catch-22, because, they want to be able to say, yeah, it's organic. What does organic mean? I think that doesn't even have a definition anymore. Let's talk about like grass-fed beef, organic beef, whatever. You want to use that stamp. This is a fascinating story that I heard from a rancher, and most everything that I say is because of conversations. There are people out there living this life. Basically, in the state of Texas, we grow a lot of beef. Of course, we grow the most beef in the United States. Right now, we're not eating a lot of Texas beef. You can have cows in Argentina that get started. They ship them to Mexico. They put them on grain, and then a lot of times, and this doesn't, it doesn't happen every time, but that beef basically can be processed in the United States, and it can say that it's USDA prime beef. Never stayed much time in the United States. And then in the state of Texas, whenever we process our beef, we get to eat a lot of it if we know where to shop, and the market access is there. But a lot of our beef gets shipped overseas. And so you brought up the fact of bringing soy from South America, and everything that is complex about that. Our food system is coming from thousands and thousands of miles away from us. The labeling of that allows us to eat that food with not really understanding that beef came from Argentina or South America. And people have no clue how bad it is manipulated. You can have a dairy cow that has no teeth, that's never been on grass, and you can put that dairy cow on grass for a week, and it's now a grass-fed beef. So the manipulation of our labeling laws, if it has no label, I'm buying it. If I know that person, that's where it is right now. Not everybody's going to be able to do that, but the simplicity of how we can source our food now, if you put some proof of work and some low time preference, lifestyle changes, you can be eating the best pure protein and best pure produce with not that much of a hassle or extra money. It's just people don't know how they don't know the on ramps to get there. They don't understand the type of communication or maybe just, who to reach out to. So that's what we're trying to accomplish. We're bridging that gap of understanding, intelligence, and being able to source so they can raise a family and they can have, that food security that makes us feel a lot more empowered, especially these days and times.
Yeah, that's so cool. And so on the flip side of that, there was a butcher that, we moved recently, and I was so excited, and I was like, oh, they've got grass-fed stuff. I go in and I just verify, was this grass-fed all the way through? And they're like, well, in order for it to say USDA on it, the last 3 months, it has to be fed certain types of grains. And I'm like, what in the heck is that? So what is that? Why do they do that?
Well, you heard me talk about, and there's different variations of something called a technology use agreement.
Okay.
That is the people that have designed the seed, that have basically allowed it to be planted somewhere, to be grown, to harvest. And then it goes on to a whole new, journey, which basically the grain becomes the value of the cow. So if the USDA says that cow has to eat that grain for a certain period of time, it's not really because the rancher is thinking that. It's because the USDA is saying you have to do that. USDA has a lot of lobbyists that, Monsanto, Cargill, the seed companies and corporations of the world are basically saying, yeah, you're going to eat this grain for 3 months and then we're going to feed it to the American people. Well, what's in that grain? Well, it's coming from a genetically modified seed that was created by a chemical company, and that's where it's coming from. So you're eating the chemicals just through a different source, and they want to make sure that you're eating that grain through the cow. The cow is not the value anymore. How much grain that cow eats is the value.
Yeah. Yeah. And so of course I walked out of there without any meat.
It's fun. Well, it's funny you bring that up because I talk to a lot of different ranchers, and a lot of them love me, and some of them, they don't probably like me as much. And I'm not trying to be unfriendly. I just want to know how they're doing things. But, by saying that, if you have a rancher that wants to 100% or animal protein provider, and they want to talk about how they raise their protein and how they harvest their protein and what they do, then you're going to love that rancher, farmer, animal producer, because they're going to be proud of what they do because they've put in that proof of work. And if they want to talk about it, then you have a new relationship and it's a new friendship. So
yeah, that's one of the things too that I really love about what you're doing. I mean, I almost don't even know where to begin with you, because I mean, you're hopping in your truck and you're literally going out and meeting these ranchers. Tell us the upside. Like, tell us, if people were all to get on board with you, what would be the ideal situation? Who comes on board? Who helps you? What types of ways can they impact or help you? Because you never know who's listening.
Sure. It's funny, whenever I started this, who you're talking to whenever you do something like this, you don't know. Well, throughout the time that I've been doing this, I don't know, half a year, whatever it's been, my number one follower right now is mama bears. They're people that, think about food all day long, about their children and for themselves and for their family. They're the ones thinking about dinner. They're thinking about preparation. They're thinking about sourcing. And so anybody can come along, because what we're doing with the Beef Initiative, we're going to be releasing a platform here pretty quick. And once we have that, there's going to be a lot of input opportunities that mama bears can come say, this is what I'm cooking for my kids. This is the animal protein that I'm providing to them. And this is how I'm sourcing it. So we're going to create a big conversation that I hope turns national. And like the Beef Initiative will be the platform, will be a good pivot point. And because we're inviting ranchers to come in and say, hey, tell us who you are so everybody can find you. We're going to have searchable indexes to where you can say, I'm in Washington State. I need an animal producer. I need a rancher. I need some produce, whatever it is, animal protein and produce, in the long run. That's what we're going. We're leading with beef, of course. But by doing that, there's going to be a good conversation that begins, and there's going to be a place that they can go and figure everything out and start maybe in their local communities, start talking about this and start doing what you do so well as far as networking. And I talk about my grandparents a lot because they had a decentralized way of doing. They had a party line phone system. Well, what is a party line phone system? Is that several people are on that party line, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's how they lived their lives. They knew their neighbors. They knew their people that were down the road from them, and they exchanged food throughout the year. They were going to grow certain crops. They would exchange crops. Somebody had extra beef. Somebody had extra hogs.
Right.
We can start doing that now. The environment has changed, yes, but the situations in life and humanity, they never do change.
Right.
What we can do is reestablish some good relationships. People want to be better these days. They want to be empowered. They want to have some hope again. And you're going to do it through good food. This is where all this starts. This is going to get to where it's pretty big, to where a lot of people coming in. We're going to be able to. I'm having 4 conferences across the United States this year. I'm starting in Kerrville, Texas in April. And then we're going to Colorado, then we're going to Georgia, then we're going to Florida. And so everybody can come out and kind of engage with us and tell us your food intelligence, tell us what you need to know and what you hope to accomplish. And then basically, if you are a producer, come to us, and we're going to bridge this gap between the mom, the father, the children, and the people that actually truly do feed us and who want to feed us.
For sure. I remember when you asked, go ahead.
There's a huge disconnect where here in the United States of America, we want friends, we want neighbors. Well, we're going to do it through food again. That's what our grandparents did.
I love that. The harvest table.
Yes, of course.
And I have a question. Is there some kind of, I'm on Twitter a lot, and there's this one person that I follow, and their at name is just Get Raw Milk. And it's like you can put in your zip code in any state in the United States, and it'll show you the farms where you can get local raw milk, which is like really cool. Is there something like that for a place to find high quality locally as possible? Because I know certain states don't pack their own meat and things like that for beef, because I think a lot of people really want to, but they get overwhelmed with how to, like, knowing who to find and who to trust. Is there some kind of, and someone was talking about this on the chat, is there some kind of like centralized source for that yet?
That's what we've been building out with the Beef Initiative. And we're going to start with a generalized index database where you can hit the nation with it. They're not uncommon right now. There's some of them out there. They're not all that great, and they make it very hard to kind of scrape the internet and get this data because of the codes that these producers have to use. They have to use that was feedlot fed. There's all these little attributes in there we've seen in the data that makes it very hard to get this very good localized database search. We're going to bring that. It'll be a work in progress in the beginning, but you're going to have a very good chance to get some localization intelligence as far as who's doing this around you. And especially if you're already using somebody, you can come to our platform and input that data, and that will go in same database. So it's kind of like proof of work. You're using this person, bring it to us, because we want you to tell your story for one, and then we want to be able to anybody else, to be able to use that local producer.
Great.
So that's one of the biggest things that we've been working on. I think it is very imperative that we provide that good intelligence. I'm sorry, Carmen, I cut you off.
I was just going to ask what the timeline is for your launch.
Probably,
approximately.
I'd say 10 days.
Oh, wow. It's really close.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And it's been fast, and then people are wanting it right now. And we're working fast, and it's kind of evolved, which it always does. I was in software development. I know how all this stuff, and the launch will be kind of brutal because everybody wants everything now, but we're bringing the message. This is a conversation. This is not, you're not shopping on Amazon. So don't even bring that type of instant gratification. This is a conversation that we're going to keep on having, and everybody's going to contribute. We're going to crowdsource. We're going to start many conversations that I haven't been able to even get to yet.
That's awesome. Well, it was interesting because I love the people on here. So this one lady was saying that she goes, it's the mama bears, but it's also the Nona bears, the grandparents. Because remember, I told you that's what I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be the grandmothers, but you were like, no, it's the mama bears they're more into it. So she was saying that they will be happy to share on their Telegram channel, the Nona Bears, what you're doing, which will be great. But also people asking for, do you have the link yet? And if not, I can just put it up, 10 days from now or whatever it is.
We're kind of testing off and on intermittent. It would give a bad message if I gave the URL out there.
Perfectly.
But whenever we're close to it, Carmen, I'll give it and you can broadcast it to the world. Right now you can get on Telegram and it's at Beef Initiative.
Okay.
And we just started that. I think we got about 100 people, but we just did it a couple of days ago. So start bringing all of your intelligence in. And I was talking to one of my partners and we came up with something. It's called Mine Your Protein, because Bitcoin mining, you have proof of work. So we're gonna do Mine Your Protein, and it's going to be a section. And if you want to contribute a story about heritage and food, bring it, and we'll run you through our newsletter, and we'll basically run you through Mine Your Protein section that people can go and do some searches. And it'll have basically an input section there where you can tell a story, you can share a link, you can tag your profile to Twitter, to where you can kind of create a profile within the Mine Your Protein section of the platform. So if you want to really provide a lot of information and create a conversation within the platform itself, you'll be able to do that.
Very cool. I love it. And so we were talking offline before we started about, the seed. Talk a little bit more about the seed. Break that down for people. Like, let's assume that somebody knows nothing about how defiled the seed has become, if you don't mind.
Sure. And it's a long story, but I'll try to give a good outlining of really what's going on. We genetically modified all of the seeds that we've ever basically used in the United States agriculture. At this time now, they are basically developed in a lab, and they go through and they change the genetics of these seeds. These seeds now, to where we are in our agriculture and our food department, are built to have to use chemicals to be able to grow. They need herbicides and pesticides and all kinds of other things that they have designed the seed in the genetic sequence. We used to have seeds where the farmers basically they brown bagged their seeds. They would grow a wheat crop and then they would save seeds. And then next year that wheat crop was grown from the previous season's harvest. That's not allowed anymore. You can't brown bag a crop if you're going to be part of the USDA umbrella of our food industry. So it's pretty simple. You either have genetically modified seeds or you don't. And everybody says, well, we have to modify our seeds to feed the world once again. A lot of this genetically modified seeds started happening in the 70s, even before that, but 70s, 80s, 90s. Whenever genetically modified seeds came out, nobody wanted anything to do with it. Other countries, a lot of people in the United States of America didn't understand it, but they didn't want any part of it. Since at least the 90s, when we had a lot of consolidation of food companies that, have gone up to even to the last 5 years, basically we lost the narrative that genetically modified is bad. And it's been done through labeling. It's been done through mass media communications. All these companies that are modifying the seeds have these shell companies of marketing divisions, and they control the narrative. So there's really not a lot that people can understand about where the seed started from into where it is now. One good thing, and I'll plug it because it's my newsletter, but if you go to my newsletter and you read that, it's almost a book by now. There's a lot of different stories, but the foundational layer of understanding is there, and it tells about the seed companies that go back to, hundreds and hundreds of years, in the trade routes and the type of families that are involved with these seeds. And, I'll say this, Cargill is so big and vast that they have a intelligence apparatus that matches the CIA. And this is global. This is global, and they control the seed in that way. There's many people that are, the multi-billionaires and everybody, the corporations. There's a seed vault now in Norway.
Yeah.
And they basically, under lock and key, they have every seed, millions of species of seeds that we don't have access to anymore. And they said, well, it's the doomsday vault. And they're saying, well, we got to save these seeds in case whatever happens that they want to happen, it seems like. But, we don't have access to those pure seeds anymore. If we can come across those seeds now, you guys were talking about, you're growing your gardens and everything. We've got to start doing that on the individual level, create strong individual practices, bring that to your community, and let's reverse the genetically modified seed in a way that they don't think that we can.
Yeah.
And how you do that is you quit shopping in those middle aisles at the supermarket. You protest in a way. You don't have to have a loud voice. You just, once again, it's what are you spending your money on?
So true. So true.
Also, I wanted to
go ahead,
Ma. Okay, I was going to ask, because I was talking to someone who was talking about integrity of soil and how our soil is kind of like the immune system of the earth. And so what did you say that the way that they have genetically modified and all the herbicides and pesticides has kind of like robbed soil of a lot of minerals? Because I know that some crazy thing, like 92% of all adults are like extremely deficient in magnesium and so many minerals that you used to be able to get from food. So is that because of the way that agriculture has kind of damaged the environment and the soil itself?
100%. There's no question. That's not even an argument anymore. And the big push right now is we're going to save the planet by getting rid of everything. And now you've got the government saying that we're going to be regen, and they're putting diapers on cows, and they're doing all kinds of things and saying it's because of, there's climate change. Well, no, it's because the chemicals have killed our soil. We have no more minerals. I live in the Texas Panhandle, and this was the grasslands for thousands and thousands of years, amazing grasslands. This soil is dead here. It doesn't have much longer. And whenever you till the soil as we do, you plow the soil as we do, people look at soil as dirt. No, soil is a combination of everything, the nutrients, the microbes, just the dance that goes on with, from sand to soil to mineral, everything, the grasses. And guess what? The livestock, a true good rancher, somebody that produces animal protein, he uses the cow as a land tool, the land tool to regrow the soil. And people don't even have, that's another podcast within itself. Yes. It's very important to talk about, though, because nobody's talking about how dead our soil is in the United States because of those chemicals that we started using. And, from a chemical company that started providing caffeine to Coca-Cola, that went up to basically Agent Orange, that went to Roundup. And Roundup is used in, all the lawsuits that we've had the last couple of years with Roundup. Yep. All that Roundup was on our food. Now it's in our water systems, and it's showing up in, reproductive systems, glyphosate. This is a very, very deep, long conversation. And right now, I called it about 3 or 4 months ago. I said, you watch after the first year, this marketing plan of climate change, carbon, and we're going to save the planet, and how we're going to do it in different ways. Now, well, the reason they're saying all this is because they killed our soil. Right. And they're not going to admit it. And even if they admit it, they're going to say, well, we're going to do it in a different way. Well, we have a technology use agreement that you have to sign because of a chemical company right now. Moving forward, they're going to try to capture regen in every other way, saying, well, we're going to track that cow ever since it's calved until you eat it. And we're going to say it's safe. I don't want the USDA telling me that food is safe. I'm going to go have a conversation with my buddy down the road, and I'm going to eat his produce that he gives me. That's in the long run, this is kind of being funny. The USDA has a stamp. Well, the Beef Initiative is the new stamp. And I'm trying to make it to where it's the rule of law of food now. And we can do that these days. We have the power to do that. We still have a voice here. And everybody talks about money. Everybody talks about where we are in society, politics, and everything. Well, we don't have anything moving forward if we don't have sound food.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Well,
And
have you ever seen The Biggest Little Farm?
I've seen it. Yes,
Isn't it so good? It kind of it encapsulates the whole message.
it really does.
Mhm.
And it really goes back to just the basics, you know, like let's keep it simple because God will fix it himself. Like it's all
Mhm.
there.
It's
We don't have to outthink it. It's already in the ecological system. And it's
it,
incredible. It's
well, it
brilliant.
is. And our grandparents knew this. And you
Mhm.
said simple. Let's get back to simple again. Let's quit complicating our food. It is not complicated. This is how we were the origins of our nutrition. We were doing it. This is how we got here. And and it's been a short period of time to where they hijacked that away from us. We still have control over this. This is a perfect time and opportunity. It's a perfect time for people to get some personal strength and to really say, you know, I don't know how to tackle everything that's going on with, where you're going to tackle it with pure animal protein to your brain is how you're going to tackle it, because
Mhm.
you're going to think clearly, you're going to be healthy, you're going to be wanting to get outside, you're going to do everything that they do not want you to do right now,
Mhm.
and you're going to do it in your way, and it's going to be very empowering, and you're going to have
Yeah.
a voice, and this is how you're going to have a voice.
And if you love to learn, this is fascinating. There's no end to it.
Mhm.
Like you said, it's so deep. You could
This
do a podcast on almost every little aspect of it. There was a woman out of Australia who I just love. Her name is Barbara O'Neill, and she was talking about how she had this land and she wanted to make it viable because the soil had been so beat up and so horrible, but that they did was leave these certain types of weeds. I don't remember the exact weed, but what the weed did is it went really deep into the ground and it allowed for the activity to come back into, and it just shows you that even the weeds have a purpose, you know. It's phenomenal how beautifully it was orchestrated in the beginning.
Well, it is, and everybody looks at weed, and of course, in the Texas Panhandle, we have a lot of weeds. And the one thing I would love to see for the next 5 years, and this is a generalization, I want to see all the weeds take back the soil, and that's what's going on. You bring up a very good point that not very many people understand. The weed actually gives it time for that soil to regain its nutrient value. It's
So
pretty
crazy. I
amazing.
mean,
Yeah, the
yeah.
biology of it is
Mhm.
amazing.
Well, that's why I love The Biggest Little Farm, and I think it's awesome because any level person could watch that and have incredible epiphanies and then just look at how simple it was. Now, it took a long time because it
Mhm.
had been, you know, years and years since it had been done properly. But once they let it flourish, it just was the most beautiful story. And it was a good dog story. If you like dogs, it's a good
Of course,
happy
everybody loves
family
dogs.
happy family
You
story.
know,
And
you bring up stories and everything, and there's one that I want to point out that people really need to put their compass towards. His name is Will Harris. He's out in Georgia, and he's with White Oak Pastures. He's been doing regenerative farming and ranching for 25 years, and he took over some land that was just it was baked dry and chemical laden, and now he is flourishing, and he's a perfect story to be able to look at to start understanding this is where we're going with our food. And him and Joel Salatin, Gabe Brown, for people that are listening, you know, look those names up, and you're really going to get some education, some deep level education that you can plan vacations around. Will Harris has things out at his farm and ranch in South Georgia, and so hopefully, you know, we'll end up close to there for one of our conferences.
that would be so great. Carly and I want to come to the one in Kerrville.
Oh,
Yes.
hey, you're there then. You're invited.
That sounds
I'm
so
going next
fun.
Saturday to finalize everything. And we're gonna have speakers, we're gonna have K&C Cattle out of Austin, Cole Bolton. They're going to provide all the steak. So it's going to be a fun time. So there's going to be tons of education, from financial education for the ranchers about Bitcoin to, nutrition, medical. We're going to have everybody there.
Fabulous. I cannot wait. And so, Carly, do you have any other questions I almost don't even know which direction to go next because there's so many things we could cover. You tell us if Carly doesn't have anything.
Well, one thing, don't be intimidated by this. And this is not a black and white issue. This is something that took 50 years of my lifetime to be involved in. I've seen food, to where I grew up with really good food. I've always had access to understanding and knowledge. Everybody needs to slow down when it comes to food because it's there and we're going to survive for the most part, but they need this intelligence in their life. Where this intelligence takes them is up to them. And it's not something that you're going to read a manual overnight. You're going to understand. You have to take a new approach to learning what food is first. Make it part of your lifestyle, make it part of something that you bring conversation with. I have a full freezer of beef, I always do. But, if I'm going to go Saturday night anymore, I'm not going to a restaurant. I'm inviting my closest people that I know that are on the same like mind that I am. I'm the restaurant now, and I am the food supplier. And we need to bring that type of awareness. You be the entertainment. I want this to be fun. I'm going to bring some rock and roll back into this, some cowboys, some punk rock, whatever we got to do, some faith, some strong dang faith into this. And we're going to do this, and people are going to come along. And whenever they kind of get into, the food intelligence, like you said, podcast and reading, it's going to become something. And one thing that I really want to bring to people, I'm going to bring Texas back, the heritage of how we got here. We got here with the cow, and people have kind of forgotten that. And you want to talk about history as far as ranches in the state of Texas, and in the things and the battles and how it was formed as far as an industry that became, the provider of beef across the United States. It's a fascinating story to look at our heritage in the state of Texas. Well, Texas is the new international lifestyle, and I'm going to make sure of that.
I love it.
I love that.
I really am Texas proud. Go ahead.
I was going to ask, would you want to touch on for people? Because I think that this is something that has gained huge traction recently in like the healthosphere, or whatever you want to call it, is the importance of like nose to tail eating. Because, our ancestors used to eat so much parts of the animal, and I think that sense of gratitude goes away just when you're eating the same part of the animal over and over again, and you don't have the connection to, because a lot of like a high protein diet, you need like the good fats in the cartilages, and you need like the liver for the really high vitamins and minerals. So I think that's something that people who are new to healthy eating don't understand, the importance of the whole animal and how it can be cooked and used in those kinds of things.
That's great. I'm in a process right now of really breaking down the cow to where people can have a new education as far as the cuts, because at the supermarket, you're going to have your ribeye, your T-bone, your top sirloin, very limited amount of the cow is in there, because the rest of that cow gets sold off for a different type of commodity, dog food, whatever it is, the best price is going to bring it. Our number one leading thing that we're going to do within the Beef Initiative, we're going to dissect that cow down from the hoof to the oxtail, to the nose, to everywhere there is that we can leverage that cow as a local community. Right now, my local producer, I'm in talks with him of taking all of his hides and doing something with the hides. My idea is, because cool. Yellowstone is the number one, show in the United States right now. Why would I not take his hides and turn them into something that I can give back to the local community with? He's going to give me all of his suet, which is a type of fat that you get from, and you make tallow, you make candles, and you make soap. So I'm going to turn all of that suet into a local, product that I can sell locally on our county square. In Canyon, Texas, we're close to Palo Duro Canyon. It's the second largest canyon in the United States. We get a lot of good tourism in the summers. So I'm going to use his product that he's using to as far as him being a rancher, he's going to give that to me. I'm going to turn it into a new product. I'm going to sell it locally, and it's going to come with education. Whenever I do that, the Beef Initiative is also, we have a nonprofit, and I can't say the name right now because it's being finalized, but it's going to be for single mothers and their children. And it's going to be based on pure nutrition and financial education for those mothers and for those children. So whenever I do that with the product of the cow, I'll bring it through a system that ends up into that nonprofit. And so when I go talk to ranchers, what part of the cow are you not using or that you want people to be educated on? We're gonna know the cow in the United States of America come 2023. So that's probably the best way to answer that question. But it's a really good question, because from the bones to the marrow, the nutritional value of the different cuts of the beef, how to cut them properly, there's something to be said there. You know, I had a 17-year-old boy came up to me in the gym the other day, and he's trying to do good. He's trying to live. He has a lot of faith. And he said, "You changed my life." And I didn't know what he was talking about, but he'd started reading the Substack. And then I said, "Well, okay, where are you getting your beef?" And he didn't know. I said, "Well, you're going to call Justin Trammell. He's my local producer." Well, Justin offered him a tour because he wanted to know more. Well, my friend, the young friend, went out there the next day, and he called me that night. And he goes, "I'm working for Justin now." And so he's learning everything there is to know. He's 17 years old, and now he's going to become a butcher, and he's going to have a understanding that he's going to carry on and create a legacy within his family of knowing exactly what you were talking about. So it is that important to understand everything that is wasted within a cow and how we can leverage it.
Also,
Absolutely.
just the bone broth. You know, our digestive systems are very similar to the soil systems on the earth,
Exactly.
and the bone broth brings so much back to, you know, different types of elasticity and bringing the minerals in, allowing them to stay in your system and get delivered to the blood. And I mean, it just even that one aspect is really a lot to. I mean, there's people that specialize in bone broth.
Well, I was talking to a rancher the other day, and he's going to, you know, he doesn't use his bones right now. I said, "Bring your bones through the Beef Initiative. We'll just start selling them through the Beef Initiative, because if there's going to be something that they start with as far as the oxtail or the bones or whatever, it's going to be the bones, because people are really discovering, just like you said, I mean, it acts like the soul. I mean, the nutrient value of marrow and just how you can harvest that marrow into nutrients, create the broths. There's a lot of different types of broths too that you can make. It's unlimited. And, you know, us having this conversation right now, there's going to be a grandmother or a mother that comes to us and say, "We have the perfect recipe for bone broth. Where do I get my bones?" I said, "Well, you go through the Beef Initiative." So
Yeah.
I love it.
That's-
Well, and Carly also does, it's bovine gelatin. So she takes the
beef
bovine gelatin and she makes all these amazing jellos and gummy bears. And
See,
it's
people
just
don't
phenomenal.
understand. Yeah, people don't understand that. Yeah, the gelatin is where Jello came from. It's not there anymore, you know. So for sure.
No.
But that's I mean, that's a good idea. I mean, anything that we can leverage again. There's all kinds of hobbies that can be created. There's all kinds of things you can do for your local communities as far as faith-based. There's things about to happen with this education.
It's so
Also,
exciting.
That's what I was going to say too. Like, I think a lot of the reason people aren't as passionate about eating healthy is because they really don't understand what it's doing to our bodies. They hear, like, you hear things like, "Oh, you want to eat organic because it's sprayed with pesticides," but you don't really like understand what that means. And I think that it's interesting that we're talking about bone broth and the importance of the gut, because like Roundup has glyphosate in it, or I don't know if I'm saying that right. I think so. And that acts like an antibiotic in your gut. And then if you know that that's where your neurotransmitters for your brain are made in your gut, and we see that these rise, I think that so much of the rise in like depression and anxiety in young teens simply has to do with a lack of minerals, a lack of vitamins, and guts that have been completely destroyed. I mean, you're basically feeding kids antibiotics with all these stuff that it's sprayed with terrible stuff. So adding things like bone broth is very easy to make. It's very fun. You get to support local ranchers, and you get to start the healing process of of your gut and restoring a lot of things. And I think that people don't realize how deeply entrenched mental health is with diet. And I think that'll become very popular soon.
Well, in that, once again, we're going to have a podcast about the medical, pharmaceutical, agricultural complex. I have no problem tying all the dots together. I'm going to send you a chart, Carmen, and you'll be able to break it down. And it's real. It's just a chart that has all the companies that the medical, pharmaceutical, agricultural complex is the same people. They're the ones that create the anxiety. They're the ones that prescribe pills for the anxiety. They're the ones that, create obesity, but then they give you, insulin for your diabetes. This is very vast. And once again, we're not going to dissect this down and call a bunch of global corporations out. We're just going to say, hey, this is the process. This is what's going on. And, from your pharmaceuticals, you're walking antibodies right now. Most Americans are walking antibodies that are chemicals. And, people's, it's interesting because people say, well, I don't understand what's going on. No, you do. There's a form of cognitive dissonance out there. Our country right now is metabolically bankrupt. And I'm sorry you're still in denial, but I think the last 2 years just proved that we're not healthy. And we won't go there, but people need to have a reflection of who they are. They need to say, why do I desire what I desire? And everybody needs to ask that question individually. I've done it. I mean, and if you want your children to be healthy, if you want to be able to process, like you said, in your brain, broth, start there. Carmen, you asked earlier, what do? Start drinking broth in the morning for breakfast. Yeah. That's it. Try it.
It's good.
Try it for 1 week. Yeah. Try it for 1 week and see how well you feel. I make my own butter. I put butter in my coffee and people are like, why do you do that? Exactly. So there's these little tricks that you can start doing, and it's going to be a rabbit hole that you go down to.
So cool. Well, even just the earthing piece, I work with people all the time that come to me for anxiety or depression or whatever, and they can't get rid of it with whatever they're doing already. And oftentimes just getting them to sit on the earth for a certain period of time per day. Well, imagine if you're sticking your hands into the dirt and you're actually putting the soil or the seed into the soil yourself, and you're pulling the weeds and all of the different things that you're touching and you're ingesting, and you're back in the earth. And this is where some of the most successful rehab, people who have gotten addicted to drugs and alcohol, they will take somebody and they will put them in the woods for a week with no technology, and they will have epiphanies they've not had before. Why? Because they're sitting alone and quiet, and they get to commune with nature and what God intended. And it's just so powerful to me to think that, okay, even if you can't afford to have a cow or don't have the space for it, everyone has room to have, even if it's a patio garden, you can do a little bit. And it's healthy in every possible way. They've even gotten people to resync their circadian rhythms so that they can get better, get on a better sleep schedule. And so I have, I kind of have a deadline on time, but I have one more question for you. I would love to have you back if you would ever come, because we have
anytime.
Okay. Oh, thank you. But I'm super curious about if you have found so far in Texas that there are any political people that are in positions of power that even understand this to even a visceral level, like they're just feeling it. Just personally curious.
Yeah. Kind of a story that I've been seeing with the people I've been talking to. A lot of these ranchers, they definitely have connections to their local politicians, and most of them know the representative. And that's where all this starts. As far as food, we have to start with the local representation in the state of Texas. I'm getting some good inroads to people that are in the agricultural world that basically they're willing to talk. They want to know more. What's the demand from the constituents of people out there? And so we're going to start doing some heavy negotiations with some local politicians in Texas. There's a lot of organizations out there. There's one called the Ogallala Commons that my local producer, he's involved with. We have the Texas Beef Council. Let's talk. Let's talk about where you are as a beef industry in the state of Texas. this because beef initiative is going to be a beef industry as well. So we might as well start talking now. And so, all the politicians that want to move forward and be successful and they're thinking about Texans, they're going to start talking about food in a different way because we have some leverage.
Thank you. Well,
Mhm.
it'd be really cool to see some of them in Kerrville,
Sure.
I have people that I'm going to reach out to and let them know. So as soon as you have any kind of, printed
Schedule.
digital, yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be awesome. I would
And
love to share it.
I'm looking at 2 representatives as well right now. So we're going to try to get there. They're going to be invited for sure. So
that's awesome. I'm glad you asked that, Mom, because that was one of the questions I was curious about too, because I do think that this is like we see how entrenched lobbyists and pharmaceuticals and agriculture companies are encroached with government. And I think that it's going to be that this is something that once a politician is really passionate about and really dedicates themselves to and doesn't sell out to any of those things, that they will see a lot of success from all the mama bears who really spend time researching
exactly.
this, worrying about their children.
Well, going back to the mama bears and the grandmothers, what did you call grandmothers? I'm sorry.
The Nona Bears.
Oh, the Nona Bears. Okay, I
That's
didn't
what
know
she
that
said.
one.
I love that name. I hadn't heard it before either. So
well,
thank you to
we're
my
recruiting
incredible.
every one of them for their input, and they have power. I know that. I'm smart. I'm a man. I know that the power where it lies. As far as taking it, revolutions are won by the women. The men fight, but the women are the glue. The moms are the glue. Everything. There's something there that's unspoken, unheard. That it's not really something you can put into words, but we know where our power is as far as good people that have faith, and we're going to leverage all of that. So anybody that wants to be a part of this, I encourage you to just come on. You and I are going to be speaking a lot, Carmen, hopefully as well, all of us basically.
Yeah.
So, whatever we can do to get the politicians out there, get the local communities involved, to get the people that are already doing these farmers markets, anything anybody wants to have a discussion about, we're going to give you a platform.
Thank you
Amazing.
so much. We appreciate you. We appreciate your time. So sorry about yesterday. My dishwasher blew up unexpectedly. So we had
No
to tear
worries.
out everything in the kitchen, and it was too noisy to have a podcast. But yes, definitely would love to have you back. We're here. If anyone has a heritage and food story, what a cool thing to share with him. I will have as much information about TC as I can find, and I will put it in the description box in the next hour or so. Carly will have her bone broth recipe and her Jello recipes on Twitter. You can contact her, follow her on Twitter, and thank you. This is fun, and this is, like you said, like it's bringing back that harvest table. And even though it's starting on Zoom, there's just people. They're connected. I can feel the wave coming.
Too. Yeah, it's
coming. Awesome. I have chills.
It's here, and we're close to February. Let's have a good spring. Let's have a fantastic summer this year. Let's change our lives this year, and let's take control back. And we're going to do it with food. That's where you start. It's not with politics. It's with that meal, that harvest table. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. And
Thanks,
thank you
guys.
everyone for being here. And I appreciate everybody's comments. You actually had a homesteader in here, and she is so excited, and it's awesome. We're all going to connect. So anyone that is interested in being a part of this, please, follow him on Telegram and Twitter, and be a part of showing up for his conferences.
Thanks, guys.